Sandra slid another document across the table without a word. Her fingers retreated slowly, as if she understood that whatever was on that page needed space around it. I looked down. It was a birth certificate. The paper was crisp and official, printed on the pale green security stock that State Vital Records offices use. I had seen one like it before. My own, framed in my mother's hallway for decades. I knew what I was looking at. I knew exactly what the columns meant, and where the names would appear and what they signified. And still, the words took several seconds to fully land. Father Marcus Wellington, Mother Rebecca Sullivan, Child Emma Sullivan, Wellington, age 4. I blinked. Read it again. The letters shifted slightly, the way text sometimes does when your eyes refuse to accept what your brain has already processed. I pressed my fingertips flat against the table and read each line a third time, slowly, the way you read a contract when you suspect something is wrong. A child, not a rumor, not a suspicion. A documented legal, certified child, Emma. 4 years old, named with a hyphenated surname that acknowledged both parents, as if Marcus had decided that hiding a secret family was acceptable, but denying his daughter his name was a line he wouldn't cross. The room felt impossibly quiet. I was aware of the hum of the air conditioning, the faint sound of traffic several floors below, the soft creak of Sandra's chair as she shifted her weight. Everything was ordinary. The world outside the window was going about its afternoon without any awareness that mine had just folded in half. Sandra spoke gently, the way experienced people speak, when they have delivered this kind of news before and understand that the person on the other side of the table needs a moment before they can hear anything else. Based on the records, she said, it appears he's been supporting them financially since at least 2021. Regular transfers, consistent amounts, a separate account he opened in February of that year, 2021. The word landed somewhere low in my chest. 2021 was the year Marcus had started working late. Not occasionally, not during a busy quarter, but persistently, reliably, almost every Tuesday and Thursday. I had stopped commenting on it by summer. I had told myself it was ambition. I had told myself he was under pressure. I had bought him a new briefcase for his birthday that year, because I thought it was a kind gesture, a way of saying I see how hard you're working and I support you. 2021 was the year he had stopped talking about children. We had discussed it for years, circled around timelines and guest rooms, and whether we wanted one or two. And then somewhere in the middle of that year the conversation simply went quiet, the way a song fades out rather than ending. I had assumed he needed more time. I had assumed we would come back to it. 2021 was the year our marriage had begun, quietly and without announcement, to fall apart. 3 days before Sandra showed me that birth certificate, I had believed the problem in my marriage was distance. I did not yet understand that distance had a name, an address, and a 4-year-old daughter who drew pictures of my husband. The first clue was a dry cleaning receipt in the inside pocket of Marcus's navy jacket. There was nothing dramatic about it. 1 suit, 2 shirts, a Chicago address printed beneath the total. We lived in Philadelphia. Marcus traveled often, so I nearly placed it on the dresser and forgot it. Then I noticed the pickup date. He had told me he was in Atlanta that week. I stood beside our bed holding that small strip of paper, while the shower ran behind the bathroom door. My mind supplied explanations with desperate speed. A colleague's receipt, an old jacket, a printer error. Trust does not disappear the moment evidence appears. First, it fights for its life. At dinner, I asked Marcus how Atlanta had been. He complained about the airport, described rain against his hotel window, and mentioned a client who had ordered an absurdly expensive bottle of wine. The details came easily. That frightened me more than hesitation would have. Either the receipt meant nothing, or my husband had practiced lying until invention felt like memory. The next morning, I called the cleaner. I told the woman who answered that my husband had misplaced a garment and gave her the ticket number. She pulled up the account and said the order had been collected by Rebecca. Before I could ask who Rebecca was, she added, his usual authorization is still on file. Usual. One word opened the first crack. I searched the Chicago address and found a brick apartment building near Lincoln Park. Property records showed Unit 4B belonged to Rebecca Sullivan. Her public social, media profile was carefully restricted, but one old photograph remained visible from a neighborhood block party. Marcus stood in the background holding a little girl on his shoulders. He was not looking toward the camera. He was looking up at the child with a tenderness I had spent years believing exhaustion had taken from him. I saved the photograph and closed the laptop. Then I opened it again because denial had already begun negotiating. Perhaps it was a friend's child. Perhaps Rebecca was a client. Perhaps the image had been taken before our marriage. Every possibility failed against the date in the corner. I did not confront him. That surprised me. I had imagined betrayal would turn me into someone loud, someone who threw a glass or demanded a phone. Instead, I became precise. I called my attorney, who told me not to access accounts unlawfully or warn Marcus before we knew whether marital assets were being moved. She gave me Sandra's number. Sandra Price was a licensed investigator with silver hair, quiet shoes, and an office containing no personal photographs. She asked for facts, not theories. I gave her the receipt, the address, Marcus's travel calendar, and the photograph. She asked whether we had children. I said no. The answer caught in my throat, because Marcus and I had once spent entire evenings choosing names for children we assumed were waiting somewhere in our future. 24 hours later, Sandra confirmed the apartment, the recurring transfers, and a preschool registration listing Marcus as an emergency contact. Then she asked me to come in rather than discussing the rest by phone. I knew that meant the truth was larger than an affair. I did not know how much larger until she slid the certificate across the table. I sat without speaking for what felt like a long time. Sandra didn't try to fill the silence. She was good at her job in the way that really skilled people are good at their jobs. Not through noise, but through restraint. I was thinking about memory. About how the mind stores experience in certain categories, labels it, files it away under headings that make sense at the time. What I was doing now, sitting in that office with a birth certificate in front of me, was refiling 5 years of stored memory under entirely new headings. The cancelled vacation to Portugal. I had believed him when he said the project timeline had shifted. I had been disappointed, and then I had forgiven him, and then I had quietly mourned the trip we never took. The missed anniversaries. Not all of them, but 2 in particular. Our 4th and our 6th. Both times there had been reasonable explanations that I had accepted because I wanted to accept them. The absences that fell on weekends. The phone calls he took in the car. The evenings when he came home already tired in a way that had nothing to do with work, a kind of bone, deep fatigue that I had attributed to stress, but that I now understood was the exhaustion of maintaining 2 separate lives. The emotional distance, the way he had slowly, almost imperceptibly, stopped turning toward me, not dramatically, not in a way that announced itself, just a gradual withdrawal, like a tide going out so slowly you don't notice until you look down and realize the water is gone. It all arranged itself differently now. Every memory I had sorted under the heading of our marriage. Our problems, our rough patches, the ordinary friction of 2 people sharing a life, rearranged itself under a different heading entirely. Marcus hadn't been drifting away from me. He had already left. He had simply forgotten, or chosen not, to tell me. That evening, I drove home in a state of extraordinary calm. This surprised me. I had expected to cry in the car, or to feel the kind of shaking, physical anger I had felt in Sandra's office the previous day, when she first showed me the photographs. Instead, I felt very still, very clear. I knew what I needed to do. I set the house in order. I cleared the kitchen counters. I wiped down the dining room table. I put away the things that had been left out, straightened the throw pillows on the sofa, ran a cloth along the surface of the bookshelf. I wasn't cleaning because I was anxious. I was cleaning because I wanted the room to be completely neutral when Marcus arrived. I didn't want clutter. I didn't want the television chattering in the background. I didn't want anything ambient that might give him somewhere else to look. I sat down at the dining room table and waited. Marcus came home at 8:43 in the evening. I know the exact time, because I watched the clock move through the last several minutes before I heard his key in the lock. I heard him set his bag down in the entryway. I heard him pause. He paused because the house was silent in a way that houses aren't usually silent when someone is home. There was no cooking smell, no background sound, no ordinary noise of habitation. The silence was specific and deliberate, and he felt it before he saw me. He appeared in the doorway to the dining room. He was still in his work clothes, jacket slightly wrinkled the way it always got by the end of a long day. He looked at me sitting at the table, and something shifted in his expression. Not guilt yet, but the early precursor to it, the instinctive scan a person does when they walk into a room and sense that something is wrong. "Everything okay?" he asked. His voice was careful, casual in the way that careful voices imitate casualness. I looked at him. I had been rehearsing this moment for hours, but when it came I didn't use any of the lines I'd prepared. I just asked the most direct question available. "How's Rebecca?" The color left his face immediately. Not gradually, immediately. One moment he had the ordinary color of a man who had just come home from work, and the next moment he looked like someone had pulled a plug. For 3 full seconds, neither of us moved or spoke. I counted them. I wasn't being theatrical. I was simply present in the moment in a way I hadn't been in years, aware of every small detail, the sound of a car passing outside, the way his jacket shifted slightly as his breathing changed. Then he said very quietly, "What?" I reached into the folder I had placed at the edge of the table and slid the birth certificate toward him. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He looked at it before he picked it up. His hands were already unsteady when he reached for it. He held it in both hands the way people hold things they're not sure are real. And I watched him read it. And I watched his face go through several things in quick succession. Recognition. Then something close to relief that the pretending was over. Then a grief that seemed genuine and that I wasn't sure what to do with. "Emma seems beautiful," I said. I had seen one photograph in Sandra's file. A little girl with dark curls and her father's eyes, photographed at what appeared to be a birthday party, smiling at something outside the frame. She was entirely innocent in all of this. I wanted Marcus to know that I understood that. The silence after I said her name lasted a very long time. Eventually, Marcus sat down across from me. He set the birth certificate carefully on the table between us, as if returning something that didn't belong to him. He folded his hands. And then he put his face in his hands and began to cry. I want to be honest about what that was like to witness. There was a part of me, a significant part, that felt very little sympathy in that moment. The grief on display was real, I believe. But I was aware that he was grieving being discovered, which is not the same as grieving what he had done. And I was aware that I had been sitting with my grief alone for the past 24 hours, without anyone to witness it, and that I had not cried. I had simply continued functioning, because that is what the betrayed party usually does. But I didn't say any of that. I waited. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus talked. Not smoothly, not all at once, but in pieces the way a confession comes out when there's no longer any reason to protect the story. He had met Rebecca during a business trip to Chicago in the spring of 2019. She was in marketing for a firm that shared the hotel conference space with his company during a 3-day industry event. What began as the kind of intense, temporary connection that business trips sometimes produce became something he didn't end when he should have. He went back. Not for work, initially, though he invented work reasons. He flew to Chicago on 4 separate occasions in the 6 months after they met, always with a plausible explanation, always with something on his calendar he could point to. By the time Rebecca told him she was pregnant, in the fall of 2020, he had been conducting a full relationship for over a year. I asked him, at some point in that long evening, why he hadn't told me then. Why he hadn't come home from Chicago on some Tuesday night and sat me down and said, "This is what I've done and I'm sorry and here is the truth." He didn't have a clean answer for that. He had several incomplete ones. He said he didn't want to hurt me. He said he thought he could figure out a way to make it right, without having to destroy everything. He said Rebecca hadn't asked him to leave me. That she had, apparently, been willing to accept the situation she was in. Though I found myself wondering how much of that was true, and how much was the story he needed to tell himself. What he had built. once the decision was made to conceal rather than confess, was an architecture of logistics that must have required extraordinary sustained effort. A second apartment in Chicago, covered by transfers from an account I didn't know existed. A second phone used only for contact with Rebecca. 2 entirely separate calendars, one visible to me and one maintained privately, so that he could track where he was supposed to be and who he was supposed to be at any given moment. 2 birthdays. Emma's birthday and mine, both in the spring. 3 weeks apart, he celebrated both. He told me about a work conference on the week of Emma's birthday party. There was a photograph of him in Sandra's file, standing in someone's backyard with birthday balloons, holding a small girl in a yellow dress who was laughing. 2 Christmases. He spent Christmas Eve with me, and Christmas Day with a family emergency that, I now understood, was not an emergency at all but the other Christmas. 2 versions of himself. One who was my husband, who came home to our house and sat across from me at dinner, and watched television beside me on the sofa and slept in our bed, and another who was Emma's father and Rebecca's partner and lived, apparently, a second complete life every time he boarded a plane to Chicago. For 5 years, he had convinced himself he could maintain both. I never meant to hurt you, he said. This was near the end of the 2 hours, when we had covered most of the facts and the conversation was running out of new information and starting to turn in circles. I laughed. I didn't plan to. It came out of me before I could decide whether to let it. Not because anything was funny. Nothing was funny. I laughed because the statement was so perfectly, completely inadequate that it almost had a kind of purity to it. Every person who has ever done this thing, built this kind of deception, has said some version of those words, and they are always true in some narrow technical sense. Of course, he hadn't woken up one morning wanting to cause me pain. And they are always, simultaneously, the most insufficient possible response to what has actually occurred. You built a second family, I said. His head dropped. He had no answer for that, because there is no answer for that. You can explain an affair. You can explain a mistake. You can explain bad judgment and weakness, and a moment that became a pattern. You cannot explain a birth certificate. You cannot explain 5 years. You cannot explain 2 Christmases. He didn't try. I asked him to sleep in the guest room that night. He did so without argument. I went upstairs, and I sat on the edge of our bed. The bed we had shared for 7 years. And I thought about the woman who had bought a briefcase to support a husband who was busy building something that had nothing to do with her. I didn't cry that night either. I'm not sure why. I think perhaps I had already moved past the part of this that required tears and into the part that required action. 3 weeks later, I filed for divorce. I also wrote Rebecca a letter. Not because I believed she owed me comfort, and not because I wanted to compete with her for the title of most injured woman. I told her that Emma's name would be kept out of every public filing possible. A child should not become collateral simply because adults constructed her life inside a lie. Rebecca replied once. She said Marcus had told her our marriage existed only on paper, and that I refused to sign documents because I wanted his money. She enclosed copies of messages in which he promised divorce dates that came and went. Reading them did not make us allies, exactly, but it rearranged the geometry of the betrayal. Marcus had not built one honest life and one secret life. He had built 2 rooms full of women waiting for him to become truthful. That knowledge mattered during settlement. When his attorney tried to frame Rebecca as a reckless affair and me as a vindictive wife, both of us provided the same calendar from opposite sides. Every false business trip aligned. Every invented emergency had a destination. The lie collapsed because the people separated by it finally compared notes. I met Emma only once by accident, outside the courthouse. She held Rebecca's hand and carried a purple backpack almost as large as her body. Marcus knelt to speak to her, and for 1 second I saw the father he might have become in our home if he had possessed the courage to tell the truth. I felt sorrow, not for the marriage, but for every life his deception had forced into hiding. My attorney moved quickly once she had Sandra's full documentation in hand. The evidence was comprehensive: financial records, account statements, wire transfers, property records on the Chicago apartment, phone records establishing regular contact photographs, the birth certificate. Marcus's attorney reviewed the file and, I was told, advised his client not to contest. The hidden accounts were the most damaging piece. Marcus had been diverting funds for years, routing money through a series of transfers that were designed to be difficult to trace, but that Sandra's financial forensics contact had reconstructed in meticulous detail. The concealed assets alone shifted the settlement calculus significantly. My attorney was thorough and unhurried, and the judge reviewing the financial disclosures was not sympathetic. Neither, as it turned out, was Marcus's employer. The same financial disclosures that came apart in the divorce proceedings raised questions that his company's compliance team apparently felt obligated to investigate. I don't know the full details of what happened professionally. That information didn't reach me directly, and I didn't seek it out. I know only that the architecture of a double life, once it begins to come apart, rarely stops at the first wall. The systems people build around deception are interconnected. When you pull one thread, others follow. The life Marcus had spent years constructing came apart one piece at a time over the following months. I watched some of it from a distance and heard about other parts secondhand. I found, as time passed, that I had less interest in the details than I expected. The outcome had already been determined in Sandra's office on the afternoon she slid that birth certificate across the table. What happened to Marcus afterward was his story to carry, not mine. 9 months after I filed, I was standing on a beach watching the sun rise over the water. I had driven there the previous afternoon on an impulse, which was something I was allowing myself to do more often now. Act on impulse. Change plans at the last moment. Make decisions that served only me. I had stopped at a small inn a mile from the shore, checked in without a reservation, eaten dinner alone at a table by the window, and slept better than I had in years. The divorce had been finalized the week before. The house, our house, with the kitchen I had designed, and the garden I had planted, and the guest room I had once imagined turning into a nursery, had been sold. My share of the settlement was in an account under my name alone, and the number in that account was enough to take a full breath. Maybe for the first time since I was 26 years old and believed that the future was settled and safe. I was standing at the edge of the water in the early morning, shoes off, the sand cold under my feet, watching the horizon go from gray to pink to gold. The beach was mostly empty. A man was walking a large dog far in the distance. A couple stood together near the water's edge, not talking, just watching the same sunrise I was watching. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost didn't look at it. I had been making a practice of not looking at my phone, first thing in the morning, of letting the first few minutes of a day belong to the day, and not to whatever the small screen wanted to deliver. But I looked. It was a message from Marcus. 3 words. "I'm sorry, Sarah." I stood there reading it. The sun had fully cleared the horizon now, and was laying a long bright line across the surface of the water, the way sunrises do when the sky is clear. I read the message twice. 5 years of lies. Not little ones, not the small, social untruths that everyone tells to smooth over the ordinary friction of life, but sustained, deliberate, architectural lies. 5 years of false calendars, and invented conferences, and a phone he kept in his car, and an apartment in another city, and a daughter whose existence was kept from me like a secret he intended to carry indefinitely. 5 years of making decisions on my behalf, about our future, about children, about the shape of the life I thought we were building together, without telling me the truth that would have allowed me to make my own decisions. 5 years stolen from a life I could have been living honestly. 3 words on a screen didn't reach the bottom of that. They couldn't. An apology that arrives 9 months after a divorce is finalized, delivered by text message to a phone number you haven't blocked yet, because you forgot to, is not the same as accountability. It is not the same as reckoning. It is a man who woke up one morning feeling the weight of something, and wanted to put some of that weight somewhere other than himself. I understood that. What surprised me, standing on that beach, shoes in my hand, the cold sand between my toes, the sun climbing steadily into a clear sky, was that I didn't need anything from that message. Not an apology, not an explanation, not a better apology, not a longer explanation, not closure. Which is a word people use when they mean they want the other person to say something that makes the painful thing stop being painful. The painful thing was already losing its edge, not because Marcus had apologized, but because I had spent 9 months slowly, deliberately building something new. A new apartment, small and entirely mine, with bookshelves I had arranged myself and a kitchen where I cooked what I wanted when I wanted it. New routines. Old friendships I had let go quiet during the marriage and had begun carefully tending again. A therapist I saw every other Thursday, and who had helped me understand that what I was grieving was not only the marriage, but the version of myself who had accepted less attention and less honesty than she deserved, because she had told herself it was enough. I deleted the message. The action was simple, 2 taps, and I watched it disappear from the screen. I blocked the number. Then I slipped the phone back into my bag and stood looking at the water. I thought about the dry cleaning receipt. The thing that had started everything, that had seemed at the time like an ordinary piece of paper in an ordinary jacket pocket. The kind of thing you find and set on the counter without thinking twice, and then think twice about, and then can't stop thinking about. Sandra had told me once that most of the cases she worked came down to something small. A receipt, a charge on a credit card statement, a time stamp on a photograph. The enormous deceptions, she said, always had small cracks. They had to. Sustaining a lie of that scale over that many years meant generating a continuous volume of small details, and small details accumulate, and accumulations develop cracks, and cracks let light in. The dry, cleaning receipt had let light in. It hadn't destroyed my life. I had believed, for several days after I found it, that it might. That whatever it pointed toward was going to unmake everything I had built and leave me standing in rubble. That was true, in a sense. The marriage was gone. The house was sold. The future I had mapped out with careful, trusting hands turned out to be built on a false foundation, and when the foundation gave way, the structure came down. But rubble isn't the end. Rubble is just the starting condition for something new. The truth had been painful in a way I had not previously experienced. A kind of pain that went into the architecture of yourself, understanding and rearranged things you thought were fixed. But the truth was also the only thing that had given me the ability to stand on a beach in the early morning, alone and completely free, with money in an account under my name, and a life that belonged to no one but me, watching a sun rise over water that didn't care about any of it and was beautiful anyway. I turned away from the ocean. The sand was warming where the sunlight reached it, and the cold was already beginning to lift from the morning. And behind me, somewhere up the beach, was the small inn where my car was parked, and inside it the roads that led back toward a life I was still in the process of building. I felt something settle in my chest. Not happiness exactly, not yet or not completely. Something quieter and more durable. The feeling of standing on ground that is your own. The feeling of a door behind you and open space ahead. I smiled. And then I walked forward into a future that finally, completely, and without question, belonged to me. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Thank you for being here. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.